It started with a hum, unlike anything humanity had ever experienced before. A low, eerie frequency that resonated through the air, making even the hardiest of machines tremble. The phenomenon was first detected on the outskirts of the solar system, beyond the orbit of Neptune. NASA's deep space listening posts picked up the signal, a strange pattern of pulsations that, though faint, grew steadily stronger with each passing day. Some dismissed it as an anomaly, a natural occurrence, but others knew better. The eerie hum wasn't just noise, it was a message. When the signal reached Earth, all the nations of the world rallied together to decipher its meaning. Teams of scientists worked feverishly in hidden labs, their faces drawn, illuminated only by the glow of their computers. It wasn't long before they confirmed the unthinkable: the signal was artificial. It was a call from beyond the stars. The world was thrown into chaos. Governments went on high alert, military leaders debated strategies, and civilians wondered what this all meant for them. Some believed it was a sign of advanced beings reaching out, others feared the worst, that humanity was about to face an invasion. However, no one could predict what would come next. As weeks passed, humanity's worst fears became reality. The first wave of ships arrived in the skies above Earth with terrifying speed. These ships weren't the sleek, graceful crafts of science fiction, but massive, angular constructs bristling with alien technology. They appeared in orbit and began to descend, each ship as large as a city block. There was no communication, no demands. The aliens were simply here. The world watched in stunned silence as these enormous ships loomed overhead. People scattered, fled, or cowered beneath their shelters. The government broadcasted emergency alerts, urging people to stay inside, urging calm, though no one could ignore the rising panic. The aliens made no immediate hostile move. In fact, their first act was surprisingly peaceful. Large, robotic drones were released from the ships, descending to Earth's surface. These robots weren't designed for combat, or so it seemed. They surveyed the land, making no signs of aggression, merely observing, scanning, and collecting data. Governments initially saw this as a possible attempt at diplomacy, but military leaders were more cautious. With no idea of the aliens' intentions, they couldn't afford to take any chances. The world's powers quickly mobilized. Satellite images began to reveal the full scope of the invasion. Countless ships were entering Earth's atmosphere, each one a behemoth, carrying untold legions of aliens aboard. They came in waves, each one more ominous than the last. The peaceful facade shattered as the true purpose of the invasion began to reveal itself. A month passed, and the situation grew more dire. Cities began to fall. The alien forces made their first attack, devastating urban centers with precision weapons that tore through buildings and infrastructure. Entire districts of New York, London, Tokyo, and other major cities were reduced to rubble in minutes. The world's armies, equipped with the best of humanity's technology, were utterly outmatched. Every countermeasure fell short against the alien weaponry, which seemed capable of disabling entire fleets with a single strike. The peaceful probes were nothing more than scouts, an initial step in a much larger campaign. Despite the overwhelming odds, humanity had one advantage: resilience. Every person on Earth, from scientists to soldiers to ordinary civilians, felt an unshakable determination. This was their home, and no alien force would take it without a fight. It wasn't long before pockets of resistance began to form. A group of survivors in the heart of Europe organized the first underground network. Civilians, teachers, engineers, and former military personnel came together to plan their next move. They called themselves the Earth Defense Coalition. While the world's major powers had failed to hold the line, these grassroots fighters were united by one simple truth: humanity would never surrender. The coalition wasn't just fighting with weapons, they were using their greatest strength, ingenuity. In the face of overwhelming odds, they were determined to make a stand. Every piece of technology was repurposed. Planes that couldn't match the alien ships were outfitted with makeshift weapons. Drones were hacked and reprogrammed. Soldiers with little more than crude weaponry took to the streets, fighting back against an enemy with superior tech. The resistance wasn't limited to Europe. Similar movements cropped up around the world, from the jungles of Africa to the deserts of the Middle East. Humanity's spirit was indomitable. Even in the face of extinction, they refused to bow to their alien invaders. As the world teetered on the brink of collapse, a new plan was beginning to take shape. Scientists working in secret laboratories had discovered something extraordinary: the alien technology wasn't invincible. It was powered by a strange energy source that humanity had never encountered before, but its weaknesses were becoming clearer. The fight back was on. The true war for Earth had just begun. And in the shadows, hidden from the aliens' gaze, the leaders of the Earth Defense Coalition were already preparing for the next phase, an all-out counteroffensive. The world's governments had failed. That much was clear after the first wave of destruction. The once proud military forces, bolstered by decades of research and technology, had been reduced to mere fodder for the invaders. The alien weapons were unlike anything humanity had ever seen: plasma cannons that could reduce a tank to molten slag, energy shields that absorbed everything in their path, and ships that seemed impervious to conventional air or space combat. The scale of the devastation was beyond imagination. Entire cities were obliterated, and with each passing day, more were added to the list. But from the ashes of this overwhelming destruction, something began to stir, something unexpected. It started with a single resistance cell, a small group of engineers, soldiers, and former government agents in an abandoned underground facility in Eastern Europe. They called themselves the Earth Defense Coalition (EDC). The initial task of the EDC was simple: survive. The coalition's first few days were spent holed up in secret, dodging alien patrols and gathering supplies, but they quickly realized that mere survival wasn't enough. If humanity had any hope of fighting back, they needed to hit the invaders where it hurt. Through covert channels and encrypted networks, the EDC spread across the globe. It wasn't long before similar resistance cells sprang up in major cities around the world, each one a different patch of hope in a sea of despair. From the streets of New York to the war-torn alleys of Cairo, humanity began to resist. Though their tactics were unconventional and their resources limited, they were united by one undeniable truth: Earth was theirs to protect. One of the coalition's early successes was the capture of an alien drone. A small, spider-like creature used by the invaders to patrol the ruins of cities, this drone was a symbol of humanity's first true victory. It was brought back to the EDC's headquarters, where a team of engineers worked tirelessly to reverse engineer it. What they discovered was nothing short of miraculous. The drone, while advanced, relied on a power source that was unfamiliar to Earth's technology. The EDC was able to exploit a flaw in the drone's energy shield system, allowing them to disable it temporarily. This discovery sent shockwaves through the coalition. If they could disable the drones, perhaps they could disable the larger alien ships as well. This was the breakthrough they needed. Across the world, the EDC's engineers worked relentlessly to perfect a new weapon, an electromagnetic pulse (EMP) device designed specifically to target the energy fields of the alien technology. But it wasn't an easy task. The alien forces, though unaware of humanity's developing resistance, had already begun to tighten their control over the planet. The drones became more vigilant, scanning for any signs of organized opposition. Every move the EDC made was met with swift retaliation. But the resistance didn't falter. In the heart of South America, a small resistance group managed to hack into one of the aliens' communication systems, intercepting their encrypted transmissions. They learned that the invaders had a central command ship, an enormous fortress of technology hovering just beyond Earth's orbit. This ship controlled the entire alien fleet, issuing commands to the various ships stationed above Earth. It was a linchpin in their invasion, and if it could be destroyed, it might cripple the alien forces. The EDC immediately began to formulate a daring plan. A two-pronged strike was devised. One team would infiltrate the alien forces on Earth, gathering critical intelligence and sabotaging their ground operations. Another team would venture into space, using a stolen alien ship to approach the central command vessel and strike at its core. It was a dangerous mission, but one that could turn the tide of the war. Among the key members of the mission was Sarah Houghton, a former military strategist who had lost her family in the initial wave of the invasion. She was haunted by the memories of cities reduced to rubble and the screams of people who never stood a chance. But her grief had hardened into something else, a burning desire for justice. She was determined to lead the counteroffensive, no matter the cost. Alongside Sarah was Dr. Michael Ortega, a brilliant scientist and one of the engineers responsible for the EMP device. Michael's mind was as sharp as they came, but the constant pressure of working under the threat of alien retaliation had begun to take its toll on him. Yet, when Sarah asked for his help in the mission, he didn't hesitate. This was humanity's last chance. And so, under the cover of night, the teams began their preparations. The world's eyes remained fixed on the skies, where the alien ships continued their silent watch, as humanity's greatest weapon began to take shape, a weapon built not from superior technology, but from the resilience and determination of those who refused to be defeated. As the first mission to strike back took flight, no one knew if they would succeed. But they knew this: if the aliens thought humanity was ready to lay down and die, they had another thing coming. The fight for Earth had just begun, and the invaders would soon learn the true meaning of human resilience. The moonless night hung heavy over the Resistance's headquarters. In the darkened underground facility deep in Eastern Europe, the EDC's best and brightest gathered around their makeshift command center. On the screens, detailed maps of the aliens' ground forces flickered. Soldiers, scientists, and strategists worked in a coordinated frenzy. The mission was clear: infiltrate the alien forces on Earth and cripple their operations. Sarah Houghton, now commander of the 1st EDC strike team, stood at the front, reviewing the final intel. Her jaw was clenched, the weight of responsibility settling on her shoulders. She had led smaller operations in the past, but this was different. This was Earth's first real strike back, and she could feel the heavy eyes of every resistance fighter on her. Failure was not an option. The plan was to attack a key alien supply depot in the middle of what used to be Paris. It was a critical location where the invaders stored energy supplies and refined materials. Destroying this depot would disrupt their operations, slow their advance, and send a clear message that Earth was not ready to roll over and die. The Resistance had one chance. If they failed, the aliens would tighten their grip, and humanity's hope of taking back their world would become a distant dream. The team was small, just 10 soldiers, but each one was a master of their craft. There was Liam, a former Special Forces operative who could infiltrate the most heavily guarded areas without leaving a trace. Maria, a tech specialist, was responsible for disabling alien communications and providing support for the team's covert movements. Ahmed, an expert in explosives, had already designed a series of devices that would obliterate the supply depot once they were inside. The rest were a mix of elite fighters and experienced soldiers, all hardened by the brutal days since the invasion began. As the team readied their gear, Sarah stepped forward. Her voice was calm, but it carried the resolve of someone who had seen the horrors of the past few weeks and now stood determined to avenge them. "Remember," she said, her gaze sweeping over her team. "This isn't just about a mission. This is the beginning of something bigger. We take back Paris, we show the world we can fight back. We're not just fighting for survival anymore. We're fighting for our future." Liam gave a small nod, his face hard with focus. "Let's give them hell." The team boarded their transport, an old, heavily modified cargo plane, designed to evade alien radar as much as possible. They would be dropped in the outskirts of Paris, under the cover of darkness. From there, they would make their way through the devastated city, using the debris and destroyed buildings as cover, until they reached the alien depot. The journey was tense, the air thick with uncertainty. The constant fear of alien drones hovering overhead kept the team on edge, but they pressed on. They knew what was at stake. They couldn't afford to fail. As the plane descended into the heart of the ruined city, the once glorious streets of Paris now looked unrecognizable: burned-out husks of buildings, broken glass scattered across the ground, streets littered with the remnants of humanity's past. The team quickly disembarked and moved into the shadows, silent as ghosts, their footsteps muffled by the rubble beneath their boots. They reached the outskirts of the depot after hours of tense maneuvering, slipping through broken barricades and ruined streets. Sarah checked her watch. Less than 10 minutes before the EMP device they planted earlier would knock out the alien surveillance in the area, giving them a brief window of opportunity. Maria monitored the alien communications from her portable console, ensuring the signal would be jammed long enough for the strike team to make their move. The depot loomed ahead, an imposing, metallic structure that hummed with strange, alien energy. It was surrounded by heavily armed alien sentinels, towering, insectoid creatures who moved with chilling precision. The resistance had prepared for this, however. Using the EMP in carefully timed maneuvers, they had already disabled a large portion of the sentinel systems. But there were still some left, enough to make the mission incredibly risky. Ahmed crouched down, the explosives in his hands ready. He had spent weeks preparing these devices, small, precise, and capable of taking out the depot's core infrastructure. He looked up at Sarah, giving a subtle nod. "Ready," he muttered. Maria signaled the countdown. In the final moments of the operation, the team scattered into position. Liam, with his uncanny ability to move unseen, positioned himself close to the sentinels, ready to neutralize the remaining guards. The rest of the team set up their explosives, positioning them around the key structural points of the depot. As the EMP signal began to pulse through the area, the sentinels froze for a moment, their systems glitching. The team moved swiftly, every motion measured. The countdown began. Ahmed pressed a button on his detonator, and the first wave of explosions tore through the heart of the alien depot. Chaos erupted. The explosions were deafening, sending shockwaves through the area. The ground trembled as the depot's outer walls buckled. Aliens screamed in panic as their once invulnerable facility began to collapse in on itself. But the humans weren't done. They fought their way through the collapsing structure, ensuring that every critical section was destroyed. Liam moved with lethal efficiency, taking down the last of the alien sentinels as they tried to regroup. Maria hacked into the alien control systems, ensuring their communications stayed down for as long as possible. And Sarah, with an unwavering gaze, watched the fireball from the destroyed depot light up the dark sky. The team regrouped, battered but victorious. The message had been sent. Humanity was fighting back. They had struck their first blow against the invaders. But this was only the beginning. As the team made their way back into the shadows, their minds were set. They had only just begun to awaken the fury of the human spirit. The aliens might have underestimated Earth's resilience, but now, they would soon learn the cost of their invasion. The explosion that shattered the alien depot sent shockwaves rippling across the globe. News of the Resistance's first victory spread like wildfire, fueling a flickering spark of hope in the hearts of people everywhere. For the first time since the invasion began, humanity dared to believe that it could fight back. But the alien forces were relentless, and the victory at Paris was just the beginning of a much larger and more dangerous battle. Back at the Earth Defense Coalition's command center, Sarah Houghton stood over a holographic map, her eyes scanning the rapidly changing situation. The attack on the depot had succeeded beyond their wildest hopes. It had crippled the alien supply lines, disrupted their energy resources, and inflicted a serious blow to their logistical operations. But it also had consequences. The aliens, now fully aware that humanity was resisting with cunning and ferocity, had begun to adapt. Their response was swift and brutal. Within hours of the Paris operation, the aliens launched a retaliatory strike, targeting multiple cities across the globe. They deployed their most fearsome weapon, a fleet of gigantic warships, each one capable of leveling entire cities in a matter of minutes. The once hidden ships that hovered beyond Earth's orbit now began their descent, each bringing an aura of dread as they rained down destruction. The battle was fierce, and humanity's defenses were still struggling to keep up with the overwhelming technological superiority of the invaders. But the resistance had learned a critical lesson in Paris: the aliens were not invulnerable. Their technology, though advanced, had weaknesses that could be exploited. And this knowledge was beginning to turn the tide of war. Sarah's mind raced with possibilities. Every victory, no matter how small, was a chance to learn and adapt. The EMP devices that had worked so well in Paris could be used again, but they needed more intelligence, more tools, and more firepower. They couldn't afford to wait for the aliens to make the next move. Humanity had to take the fight to them. And so, the Earth Defense Coalition initiated the next phase of their plan, Operation Phoenix. Operation Phoenix was not just a military campaign, it was a global effort. The resistance had made contact with civilian resistance groups across the world, uniting all of Earth's remaining free forces under one banner. From Africa to Asia, Europe to the Americas, resistance fighters of all kinds rallied to the cause. The full force of humanity's ingenuity, resilience, and determination would be unleashed. But it wasn't just about conventional warfare. Scientists and engineers from every corner of the globe were working on a new weapon, one that could potentially turn the war in humanity's favor. Using the data gathered from the alien drones and the remnants of their technology, the EDC had discovered a critical flaw in the aliens' power grid. The aliens' energy shields, though nearly impenetrable, were powered by a rare, unstable element that was highly volatile when destabilized. If they could strike at the heart of their power source, they could disable the alien ships. Dr. Michael Ortega, the lead scientist behind the EMP technology, had been working day and night to refine this new weapon. The key was creating a device that could penetrate the alien shields and deliver a precise, controlled burst to the power core. The device had to be small, portable, and capable of being deployed from within the alien ships or on the ground, without alerting the invaders to its presence. The breakthrough came when Ortega and his team developed a prototype, the Phoenix device. This small, crystalline structure was designed to mimic the unstable energy signature of the alien's power source, allowing it to bypass their energy shields. Once activated, it would send a surge of energy directly to the heart of the alien ship, triggering a chain reaction that could disable the entire fleet. It was a long shot, but if it worked, it could cripple the alien forces in one devastating strike. The first test of the Phoenix device came sooner than expected. A reconnaissance mission had uncovered the location of a major alien command center, deep in the forests of the Amazon basin, a hidden fortress that housed critical alien command and communication equipment. If the resistance could infiltrate this fortress and deploy the Phoenix device, it could cripple the aliens' ability to coordinate their forces. Sarah and her team were chosen for the mission. This time, the stakes were higher. The alien forces were on high alert after the Paris attack, and the Amazon was a heavily guarded area. But Sarah's resolve was unshakable. She knew that they had to take this chance, or the resistance would be wiped out in the coming months. The journey to the Amazon was grueling. The team traveled through dense jungle, evading alien patrols and using every trick in the book to remain undetected. Every step was fraught with danger, but they pressed on. They knew that the fate of humanity rested on their shoulders. When they finally reached the alien command center, it was an imposing sight. The fortress was protected by a ring of force fields, drones, and sentinels. The alien technology was unlike anything humanity had seen, a living, breathing fortress that pulsed with alien energy. But the resistance had a plan. Maria, the tech expert, hacked into the alien security systems, creating a temporary window of vulnerability. Ahmed, the explosives expert, set charges to disable the perimeter defenses. Liam and Sarah led the charge into the heart of the fortress, where the Phoenix device was waiting. The final moments of the mission were tense. The team fought their way through alien guards and automatic defenses, dodging blasts and explosions. When they reached the heart of the command center, Sarah activated the Phoenix device. The alien energy shields flared brightly, but the device emitted a strange, almost organic hum as it bypassed their defenses. Then, in a flash of blinding light, the power core of the alien fortress detonated, sending shockwaves through the facility. The entire command center crumbled to the ground, its systems crashing in a massive, cascading failure. The mission was a success. As Sarah and her team made their way back into the jungle, they knew that the battle was far from over. The war was now in a new phase. Humanity had struck another critical blow. The aliens might have more resources, more ships, and more power, but they were no longer the only ones who could adapt and fight. The tide was turning, and the invaders would soon learn that they had underestimated humanity's ability to resist. As Sarah looked up at the sky, she knew this was just the beginning. The aliens had awoken a beast, and it was hungry for victory. Humanity would stop at nothing to reclaim their planet. The war had entered its most dangerous phase yet. After the success of Operation Phoenix, humanity had found its footing and begun striking back with increasing effectiveness. The alien forces were no longer invincible. They had been dealt devastating blows, critical command centers destroyed, supply depots disabled, and their once feared energy shields temporarily neutralized. But they weren't finished. The alien response was swift and brutal. Their warships, now on high alert, began to change their tactics, evolving rapidly in the face of human ingenuity. In the days following the Amazon mission, the resistance forces had been bolstered by new recruits, and their ranks swelled with a renewed sense of purpose. The Earth Defense Coalition (EDC) had become a global network of united survivors, united in their shared goal of reclaiming Earth. But with the aliens pushing back hard, it was clear that the war was entering a critical period. The next steps would determine whether humanity could hold on to their fragile hope, or if they would be crushed under the weight of alien might. Sarah Hoden sat in the command center with her team, watching the intelligence feed flash across the screens. The alien forces had learned from their mistakes, adapting their tactics and technology in response to humanity's successes. It seemed that every time they found a weakness, the invaders found a way to shore it up. The war had entered a deadly game of cat and mouse, with humanity fighting for every inch of ground. "We need to strike again," Sarah said, her voice calm but resolute. "If we give them time to regroup, we'll lose the momentum. We've taken out their supply lines, and the Phoenix device has crippled their command structure, but they're starting to push back. We need a bigger target." Liam, who had grown into one of Sarah's most trusted lieutenants, spoke up. "I've been tracking their movements. Their forces are converging on a new location. There's a concentration of alien warships over the Pacific Ocean. They're setting up a massive staging area, possibly preparing for a large-scale invasion force. If we can take that down before they finish their preparations, it'll disrupt their entire offensive." Maria, the tech expert, glanced at the map on the screen. "That's right in the heart of their operation. If we hit them there, we could stall their advance significantly. But it's heavily guarded. Getting close to that staging area will be nearly impossible." "Impossible is what we do best," Sarah said, giving her team a determined look. "We've made it this far. We've won against the odds. This is our shot." The plan was set into motion quickly. Intelligence gathered by various resistance cells around the world pointed to the fact that the alien warships were using an energy network to power their operations, a network of relay stations that stretched across the Pacific. The energy source was too powerful to destroy with conventional weapons, but Sarah and her team had another idea. If they could infiltrate one of the energy relay stations and plant a modified version of the Phoenix device, they could collapse the entire network and render the alien warships helpless. Without their energy, they would be vulnerable, perhaps even crippled for good. But there was a catch. The relay stations were located deep beneath the Pacific Ocean, in the heart of an underwater trench that was virtually inaccessible. The resistance had no submarines capable of withstanding the alien defenses, and the water pressure alone was a massive challenge. In addition, the stations were guarded by the alien fleet, which had been reinforced since the last attack. Despite these overwhelming odds, the Earth Defense Coalition wasn't about to back down. The mission was too critical, and the potential for success too great. Sarah and her team began preparations. The operation would involve two parts. One team would infiltrate the relay station using a modified submersible, while the other would create a diversion to draw alien forces away from the station. The diversion was crucial. If the aliens realized what the resistance was doing, they would bring the full force of their fleet to bear on them. They needed to move fast, hit hard, and get out before the aliens even realized what was happening. In the weeks leading up to the mission, the Resistance worked tirelessly. Engineers developed the submersible, capable of diving to extreme depths while remaining undetected by alien sonar. The Phoenix device was adapted again, its power core adjusted to work under the immense pressure of the deep ocean. And on the surface, military cells were preparing for the diversion, coordinating with resistance groups from across the world to create a series of false operations that would keep the aliens off balance. The night before the mission, Sarah gathered her team in the briefing room, each of them tense but focused. This mission would be their most dangerous yet, and there was no guarantee they would return. But they all knew the stakes. "This isn't just about stopping an alien advance," Sarah said, her voice quiet but strong. "This is about sending them a message. We're not just fighting to survive anymore. We're fighting to win." Liam gave a small nod, his usual stoic demeanor betraying a flicker of emotion. "We do this, and the aliens won't just be fighting us, they'll be fighting for their survival." Maria added, "We have to strike fast. There's no room for error." With a final, shared look of resolve, the team prepared to embark on the mission. The stakes were high, but their will was even higher. The next day, the team made their way to the shores of a remote Pacific island where their submersible awaited them. They were silent as they boarded, the weight of what was to come settling in. As the submersible sank beneath the waves, the world above seemed to fade away, leaving only the black expanse of the ocean around them. They were entering the heart of the aliens' power, and nothing would be the same once they emerged. Above them, the skies were dark with the alien warships, watching, waiting. And down below, humanity's last hope to turn the tide of the war was deep under the ocean, preparing to strike at the very core of the invaders' strength. The submersible cut through the deep waters of the Pacific with quiet precision, its hull reinforced to withstand the crushing pressure of the ocean depths. Inside, the team sat in tense silence, their eyes fixed on the monitors and equipment that glowed softly in the dim light. The world outside was a thick, inky black, and the only sounds were the hum of the submersible's engines and the distant echo of underwater currents. Sarah Houghton sat at the helm, her hands steady on the controls. She had led the team through countless missions, but this was unlike any other. The stakes were higher, the risks greater, and the uncertainty of their success weighed heavily on her mind. If they failed, the entire resistance could be crushed beneath the aliens' overwhelming might. But they had no choice but to press on. Humanity's survival depended on this mission. The submersible descended deeper, passing through vast underwater caverns and trenches, the alien relay station's coordinates now just a few miles ahead. The team had spent days preparing, reviewing the detailed maps and intelligence provided by their scouts, but the station was unlike anything they had encountered. It was a massive, heavily fortified structure hidden within the Mariana Trench, one of the deepest parts of the ocean. The alien technology that powered it was incredibly advanced, alien warships were docked at the station, and its energy network was the lifeblood of the invaders' operations in the Pacific. But there was a flaw. The energy source powering the relay station was a highly volatile substance, an unstable material that, if disrupted, would send a shockwave of destruction rippling outward. Sarah's team had spent weeks adapting the Phoenix device to target that very weakness. The plan was simple: infiltrate the station, plant the device, and detonate it from a safe distance before the aliens could mount a defense. The problem was getting close enough to plant it without being detected. 10 minutes until we reached the station, Liam said, his voice low but clear. His eyes, ever watchful, scanned the sonar displays. "Keep your eyes peeled. The aliens are likely monitoring the area closely. We can't afford to be spotted." Maria was hunched over her console, her fingers dancing over the controls. "I've hacked into their sensor systems. We've got a brief window to sneak past the outer perimeter. But after that, it's all manual. No more tricks." "We'll be ready," Sarah said, her voice calm despite the tension in the air. "Once we get close, we'll need to move quickly. The Phoenix device is primed and ready. It only needs a small breach in their energy network, and it'll do the rest." The submersible's hull groaned as it descended further, and the faint outline of the alien relay station began to materialize on the horizon. The massive structure loomed out of the darkness, a jagged, metallic monolith rising from the ocean floor. Its energy shields pulsed with an eerie, greenish glow, casting a faint light over the surrounding waters. Alien ships were docked at various points around the station, their sleek, menacing shapes barely visible against the deep blue backdrop of the ocean. The station itself was a hive of activity. Drones buzzed around its perimeter, patrolling the area with near-perfect precision. The defenses were far more advanced than anything humanity had encountered before. But Sarah's team had one advantage: the element of surprise. The aliens didn't expect anyone to attempt an infiltration at such depths, let alone from a submersible that could blend into the surrounding water. As they drew closer, Maria worked quickly, tapping into the station's external communications systems. "I've hacked their network," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "We've got a blind spot in their sensor array. I'll keep it down as long as I can, but we don't have much time." The submersible glided through the water, now just a few hundred yards from the station's outer defenses. The drones patrolling the perimeter were still within range, but they seemed to be unaware of the team's presence. It was now or never. They couldn't afford to wait any longer. Sarah gave the signal, and the team sprang into action. Liam and Sarah took the lead, maneuvering through the deep trenches and fissures in the ocean floor, using the natural landscape to stay out of sight. Maria stayed behind, monitoring the drones and jamming their communications to ensure the team could stay undetected. Ahmed, who was carrying the modified Phoenix device, kept his eyes on the countdown timer. They reached the outer edge of the station, where the energy shield flickered weakly. A narrow opening in the shields was just large enough to allow the submersible to pass through undetected. The shield's weak point was the ideal location to plant the Phoenix device, close enough to the station's power core, but without triggering a full-scale alert. As the team carefully maneuvered the submersible into position, the tension was palpable. Sarah's heart pounded in her chest. This was it. They were about to strike at the very heart of the alien operation. "Ready," Ahmed said quietly, securing the Phoenix device in place. With a deep breath, Sarah gave the order. "Let's move. We've only got one shot at this." The submersible carefully docked along the station's exterior, near one of the exposed power conduits. Ahmed exited the craft, carrying the device with precision. He moved swiftly, his every step calculated to avoid detection. The alien drones were still patrolling the area, but the jamming was working. So far, they hadn't detected the team. The Phoenix device was placed next to the power conduit. It hummed softly, its crystalline structure glowing faintly as it interfaced with the alien network. The timer was ticking down. "We're almost there," Sarah whispered, her voice tight. "Get back to the submersible, now." But just as Ahmed turned to return, a sudden, jarring tremor shook the submersible. A low, rumbling sound echoed through the water, a warning. The alien drones had detected the breach. "Move!" Sarah shouted, her voice filled with urgency. "They've found us." Liam and Maria scrambled to their feet as the submersible systems blared an alarm. The energy shields around the station flared to life, locking the team in a deadly trap. But it was too late. Ahmed had already triggered the detonation sequence. The Phoenix device activated, its core flaring with blinding energy. A pulse of destructive force rippled through the water, as the relay station's power grid destabilized. The alien warships docked nearby shuddered, their energy shields flickering and failing. And then, with a deafening roar, the station exploded. The shockwave from the explosion sent the submersible tumbling through the water, spinning wildly as the massive structure imploded in a cascade of light and debris. The team gripped onto anything they could, their bodies pressed against the walls of the submersible as the explosion reverberated through the ocean. As the waters cleared and the submersible righted itself, Sarah looked at her team, her breath coming in short gasps. The alien relay station was gone. The warships were disabled. They had done it. But they knew that the aliens were not defeated, not yet. The real battle was just beginning. And this victory, though monumental, was just another step toward the ultimate struggle for humanity's survival. The explosion that destroyed the alien relay station sent ripples across the Pacific, but it wasn't just the physical shockwave that was felt, it was the psychological impact that resonated through the alien forces. For the first time since the invasion began, the aliens knew they had been hit where it hurt. The heart of their Pacific operations was severed, and their warships were left in disarray, floating helplessly without their energy source. The resistance had struck a massive blow. But Sarah Houghton knew that this was only one battle in a much larger war. As she and her team made their way back to the surface, they were keenly aware that the aliens were not the kind to back down easily. If anything, this would only provoke them further. And now, the resistance had painted a target on their backs. Once back on land, the team was greeted as heroes, but there was little time for celebration. The destruction of the relay station had caused an immediate disruption in the alien fleet's ability to launch large-scale attacks. For the first time in years, humanity had the advantage. But Sarah understood that the alien forces would retaliate soon, and they would retaliate hard. At the Earth Defense Coalition's Global Command Center, the mood was tense. Intelligence reports came in from all over the world, confirming that the alien forces were regrouping. Their ships, though temporarily crippled, were still formidable. The Phoenix device had proven to be a powerful tool, but it wasn't a permanent solution. The aliens would find a way to counter it, just as they had adapted to every other human tactic. "We've bought ourselves some time," Sarah said, addressing the EDC's leaders. "But time is all we have. We need to use it wisely. Where do we strike next?" Liam asked, his arms crossed as he surveyed the holographic map in front of them. "They're retreating, but only momentarily. If we don't hit them hard enough, they'll regroup and come back stronger than before." Maria nodded. "We've made a dent, but we need a plan that keeps the momentum on our side. If we can disrupt their shipyards, we can prevent them from rebuilding their forces." Sarah thought for a moment, eyes narrowing as she scanned the map. The alien ships, though temporarily disabled, were not going to disappear. They were simply waiting for a new energy source, and once they had that, the tide would turn back in the invaders' favor. "They've got to have a main shipyard, a place where they're constructing their new warships and gathering resources," Sarah said, pointing to a location near the Arctic Circle. "I've seen reports of strange movements in that region. If we hit that shipyard and destroy their ability to produce more ships, it could set them back months. Maybe even years." The team didn't need to be convinced. This was the next logical step in the war. If humanity was to win, they had to destroy the very thing that powered the alien war machine. Within hours, preparations for the operation were underway. The resistance had been successful in adapting to the alien tactics, but they would need to be stealthy in this mission. Unlike the Pacific operation, where they had the advantage of surprise, the Arctic shipyard was heavily defended. This would be a strike at the heart of their shipbuilding infrastructure, and the aliens would be prepared. As they gathered around the briefing table, Sarah felt the weight of the mission settle heavily on her shoulders. The Arctic Circle was one of the most hostile environments on Earth, and the alien defenses would be unlike anything they had faced before. The resistance had no choice but to take their chances. "This mission will be one of our hardest," Sarah said, her voice steady but resolute. "We're going into the heart of their production base. We're going to hit them where it hurts. But we need to move fast, hit hard, and get out before the reinforcements arrive." The team nodded in agreement. They had all been through enough to know what was at stake. The next 48 hours were a blur of preparation. The team would deploy a combination of ground and air assault teams, moving swiftly through the harsh terrain of the Arctic to infiltrate the alien facility. Intelligence from resistance scouts had revealed that the shipyard was located beneath a massive ice shelf, hidden in plain sight from satellite view. The only way to get inside was through a series of narrow, icy tunnels that the aliens had sealed off to prevent any human infiltration. Maria worked with a team of engineers to develop a new version of the EMP devices, ones that could be deployed directly into the heart of the shipyard's energy grid. If they could knock out the facility's power before the aliens could respond, it would leave them vulnerable to an all-out assault. But the operation was high risk, the EMP devices could only be triggered from within the facility, and there was no guarantee they would have enough time to escape once the power grid went down. As Sarah and her team flew toward the Arctic base, the stark white landscape of the frozen tundra stretched out beneath them. The cold was brutal, a constant reminder of the challenges they faced. But the cold didn't matter. They had a mission to complete, and the weight of that mission hung heavily on their hearts. The alien shipyard was located deep beneath the surface of the ice. Once they landed, they would have to cut their way through miles of frozen tunnels, avoiding alien patrols and automated security systems. It was a race against time. The aliens would be aware of their presence soon, and they would do everything in their power to stop them. When they arrived at the edge of the ice shelf, the team suited up in specialized winter gear and readied their weapons. The sub-zero temperatures outside were unbearable, but inside the facility's core, the aliens' technology kept the environment at a temperature more suited to their needs. "Let's move," Sarah said, her voice sharp and commanding. The team descended into the icy abyss, their breath fogging in the frigid air. Their objective was clear: destroy the shipyard and disrupt the aliens' ability to rebuild. As they moved deeper into the tunnels, they couldn't help but feel the weight of the stakes. Every step brought them closer to a confrontation that would determine the outcome of the war. But as they neared their target, something unexpected happened. A flicker on Sarah's comm system. A warning. "Ambush!" Liam shouted. And just like that, the alien forces descended upon them. The resistance had walked right into their trap. The hunt was on. The warning blared through Sarah's comms as the tunnel ahead erupted in chaos. Alien soldiers, cloaked in advanced, shimmering armor, emerged from hidden alcoves, surrounding the resistance team in a deadly trap. They'd walked right into the heart of the storm. "Move, move, move!" Sarah shouted, her voice cutting through the panic. In a split second, everything they had planned, every detail they had accounted for, was thrown into disarray. The aliens had known they were coming. The shock of the ambush rang in her ears, but there was no time to dwell on it. The mission had to succeed, no matter what. Liam raised his weapon, unloading a burst of fire that sent alien soldiers scattering for cover. Maria was already hacking into the facility's internal security systems, her fingers flying over her console, trying to regain control of the defense protocols. Ahmed and Sarah, the heart of the team, took cover behind a massive pillar of ice and returned fire with deadly precision. "Keep them off us," Sarah ordered, peering over the edge of the cover. "We don't have long before they call reinforcements. Get to the core." The Resistance's weapons were far less advanced than the aliens', human-made guns could barely penetrate the aliens' shields. But the team had one thing the invaders didn't: sheer will. The team fought not just for survival, but for the future of their planet. Every shot fired, every move made, was for their families, their homes, their freedom. Maria's voice came over the comms, frantic but clear. "I've found the power core. I'm bypassing their security measures, but it's taking longer than I thought. These systems are more advanced than we expected. We don't have time." Liam growled, firing another round that disintegrated an alien soldier's shield. "Do what you can, but hurry." As the fight raged on, Sarah could feel the heat of the battle rising. Their defenses were crumbling, and the weight of the situation pressed heavily on her. But she wouldn't, let them fail. She was the leader of this team, and the survival of humanity depended on this very moment. She checked the readout on her wrist pad. The EMP charges were in place, and all they had to do was trigger them to knock out the shipyard's power. But the countdown was running low, and the facility was already beginning to pulse with alien activity, the power grid surging back to life as the invaders scrambled to regain control. "Get those charges set," Sarah barked at Ahmed, who was already moving toward the central energy conduit, using every ounce of his training to avoid enemy fire. The battle was intense. Aliens advanced from all sides, and every movement had to be calculated. As Sarah ducked behind another pillar, her heart raced. She caught a glimpse of Maria, sweating and panicked, as she worked to override the core's locking mechanism. It was clear they weren't going to last long in this fight. The alien forces were relentless. "Maria!" Sarah shouted. "We need that power down now." "I'm almost there," Maria replied, her voice strained. "The core's shielding is stronger than I thought, just a few more seconds." The seconds dragged on like hours. The team continued to fight, their ammo dwindling, their energy depleted, but they refused to give in. Ahmed had reached the central conduit, and he was placing the final charge when an explosion rocked the floor beneath them. The blast sent a shockwave through the facility, knocking them all off balance. "We've been compromised," Liam shouted, barely keeping his footing. "They know we're here now, and they're bringing everything they have down on us." The countdown on Sarah's wrist pad continued to tick, faster now, urging them forward. "Maria, get that core!" Sarah yelled again, her voice filled with urgency. The pressure was unbearable now, the weight of the world on their shoulders. One wrong move, and the aliens would win. Everything they had worked for would be for nothing. The next few moments were a blur. Maria's fingers flew over the control panel, the hum of the facility growing louder as the power grid surged. There was a final burst of light, then nothing. "Done!" Maria gasped, a grin breaking through the tension in her voice. "The core is disabled. The EMP charges are set, Sarah." With a sudden, deafening roar, the facility's energy grid collapsed. Lights flickered, then went out. Alien drones that had been attacking the team froze mid-flight and fell to the ground, dead. The entire facility plunged into darkness. For a moment, the world seemed to stop. The alien soldiers were disoriented, unable to call for reinforcements, their power sources disabled. The resistance had done it. The shipyard was now inoperative. But it wasn't over yet. "We've got company," Liam shouted. More alien soldiers, this time in larger numbers, were pouring into the chamber from another entrance. The team had no choice but to make their escape now. They'd won this battle, but they had no illusions, the fight was far from over. "Move out," Sarah ordered, her heart pounding as they sprinted for the exit. The ice was cracking beneath their feet as the explosions from the EMPs rattled the foundations of the facility. The tunnel they had entered was collapsing around them, and the sound of crumbling ice echoed in the chaos. They pushed forward, dodging fire and keeping to the shadows, but the alien forces were closing in. The resistance had been trapped, and time was running out. The alien soldiers advanced with relentless speed, determined to wipe them out. But just as the aliens closed in on the team's position, a loud, rumbling explosion shook the very ground beneath them. The walls of the facility cracked, and the escape tunnel began to collapse, sealing off the alien reinforcements. A rescue team, deployed by the EDC from the surface, arrived just in time. The resistance forces, battered but victorious, were evacuated to safety. As Sarah watched the team escape, she took a deep breath. The mission had been a success. The shipyard was destroyed, and the alien production had been stopped. But the war was far from over. The resistance had won a critical victory. Humanity had struck back. But Sarah knew that the real fight was just beginning. The aliens would retaliate. They would not stop until Earth was theirs. And humanity would have to stand ready, for there could be no turning back now. The final chapter of the war for Earth was still being written. And humanity's fight for survival was far from over.